So let's talk about the Valencia Marathon. First, it was not a good setup for us. We arrived in on the Friday right here, landed our plane. We actually flew into Barcelona and had rented a car to get down. Our plane landed in. It was delayed and landed in about 11 o'clock that night. We had a 3-hour drive to Barcelona, so overall, that's not great. But I wasn't too worried. We ended up getting to Valencia. We get in about 3 o'clock, land up at our apartment. It's a little tired. It's not the ideal night before race. But we get to the apartment, we'll get into bed, we'll get a good sleep. We can't get into the apartment. The key doesn't even work, and we're stranded on the road. And long story short, we're sitting in the car all night, messaging the Airbnb guy. Can't get in touch with him at all, and you just can't sleep. We couldn't sleep in the car at all. I think we got 1 hour between 6 and 7. Eventually, we did get into the apartment, I think about 9 o'clock that morning. So this is the Saturday morning before the race. I'm feeling terrible at this point. We go to the pack collection. Honestly, it seemed like a great spot to be, but at that point, I was pretty grumpy. I was tired. I was in, out, get my pack, get my race bib, and get out of there. We'd got access to the apartment, so I did get some sleep from about 10 o'clock on the Saturday morning to 2 o'clock in the afternoon. Get up, eat as much as I possibly could at that point, just get some food in. We went out, got a nice dinner, and straight back in and got to bed about probably 9 o'clock and got a decent night's sleep. So got up about 4:30 on race morning, just ate my normal breakfast. On race morning, I was feeling a good bit better. I felt better than I thought that I would. Obviously, it was definitely not ideal that we didn't get a full night's sleep that night. That was really, really annoying to me at the time. If I hadn't have been injured and I was going for a sub 3, I would have been way angrier at this point that we couldn't get into the apartment and I'd missed the night's sleep. But, we just kind of rolled with the punches. I wasn't too worried. It was maybe going to ruin my marathon, but I hadn't put in a full solid block anyway, so it didn't overly matter. Nonetheless, it was definitely a hiccup coming into marathon morning. So marathon morning, we get to the race, eat breakfast, get a taxi, get to the race, probably about 8:15. My kind of box or my corral or whatever it's called, it was taking off at 8:45. So we get there, do the usual. I kind of needed to go to the toilet, but I went in, no toilet roll. Rookie mistake. Definitely bring some with you to any marathon I'd recommend. So I was getting kind of worried at this point. Between not being able to sleep the night before, I've had some stomach problems during training, so I was starting to think, this is it. I've never had to before, but I was like, I'm going to need to go to the toilet at some point during this race, and that's going to take time off me. So we get to the start of the race, and I'm kind of late to the thing because to the start line, because where we were, the area where you put your bags away and you leave all your stuff, I thought you can see the start line. I thought you could just access it from there, but you actually have to take about a 10-minute walk around. And that kind of made me, I was rushing. I was actually ran to the start line. I just made it probably about a minute into my group, about a minute before it started. So I was fairly far back in the group. And my group was 3:12 to 3:20. And I was aiming on the day, my goal was 3:15. That's what I wanted to go for. I was trying to run 7:26s. So for that first kind of 3 mile or so, I'll actually pull up the marathon splits here. That first 3 mile or so of the race, because it's my own fault for being at the back and I should have been there earlier, but I was kind of just trying to push through crowds, and you can kind of see that here in my times. Obviously some people who are doing 7:20s, they're looking to sit at a 7:35 pace, whereas for me, that's just a little bit too slow. I need to be hitting 7:26. So I was trying to get around people for this first 4 mile here. I was up on curbs, I was running on footpaths, and I think I actually ended up running a bit further than the 26.2, because we ended up doing 26.55, which messed with my times a little bit. But at this point, I started to think, once I got into kind of a zone, I cleared the area in front of me, and I got to a point where I was running with people at sort of my pace. I started to feel pretty good. I started to feel like I could push the pace a little bit harder than this. I was looking at my heart rate data, so if we put that up on the screen here, you can see in that first 4 mile, I was cruising in around 160 or so heart rate, which I knew if I could keep it under 170 up until 17, 18 miles, I could then really let out for that 8 miles. And that's kind of how I judge things. And just looking at my data from Paris, I felt that I'd went out a little bit too soft. I was in kind of nearly zone 2 for the first 15 mile of that race. Whereas this right here, I knew I could push that a little bit more. I didn't want to go too crazy, but if I kept it under 170, I felt I'd be fairly fine. And that's what I did. You can see right up to here, sort of 16 mile in, we're sitting at like a 169 to 172, which is completely fine, and then kind of let off at the end. So I started to think, let's push the pace a little bit. And I start doing 704, 706s, and I start thinking to myself, well, let's bank some miles here, because I still think at this point I'm going to need to go to the toilet. So I'm like, if I can bank 2-3 minutes, it gives me time to go to the toilet and still get back in and still get under that 715. So I'm just kind of trying to bank miles under 726. So I know that every mile I'm saving 10 seconds, 20 seconds here. So I'm hitting 717s, and I think a 714 or 715 per mile, that is 710 pace. So at this point, I'm starting to think 10, 11 mile in, I see that I'm consistently hitting on my watch under the 7:14 mark. I'm saving 5 seconds here, 7 seconds there, 4 seconds there. And I start to think in my head, can I go for a sub 310 here? Is a sub 310 possible? I'm starting to think that I can actually do it. And then we push through. One thing that I did notice, and I seen this at mile 10, that was that my watch was off by a significant amount. I think it was about 0.2 mile when I first seen it. My watch was hitting 10 mile about 0.2 mile early. So I think that was probably from that initial running around, people trying to move through the pack. So I knew that even if I was hitting this on my watch, it's not going to be completely accurate, and I'm going to have to make up a little bit more time. But I was doing really well at this point. And from 18, 19, and 20 here, I really felt good. I really started to push the pace there. I did a 702, a 706, and I felt like things were going really well. I hit a 706, a 702 in them 2 miles, 19 and 20, and that felt brilliant. I really thought, like, right, if I can hold this, I'm definitely going to make it. And then 21 and 22, they hit me like a brick. They absolutely crushed me, them 2 miles. But it was uphill, and I think that played into it. But I also took a gel in around here, a caffeine gel. I actually took it off the course. And I took a caffeine gel there, and I think I got that little extra boost for those last 2 to 3 mile here, hitting a 711 and a 708. The only real kind of pit that I felt like I was in was those 2 miles. Otherwise, this race felt great. The only thing I would note, and I think this definitely comes down to the tiredness from the Friday night, not sleeping. From mile 13, I felt, and I never really get this, especially in training or even in my other races, I've never really had this, but I felt like my whole body was just ready to cramp. Anything could go at any minute. Luckily, nothing ever did go. I was very, very lucky about that. But just, you know, when you're tired, you pull an all-nighter and you feel like your muscles are achy. It kind of felt a little bit like that. So I was worried, but I was still performing well. My legs were holding up. And as long as nothing pinged, I felt like I could make it through. And that's what we did here. And we come in with a 3:11:55. So honestly, the race was amazing. I'm so happy with that time. It obviously would have been nice to come in 3:10. The actual Strava here says 3:09:24. It's unfortunate that's not the accurate number. It would have been cool to get a sub 3:10. But Valencia overall was great. The marathon was great. That course is definitely fast. It's a great place, I think, to go set a PB. Everything was set up brilliantly. The only thing I would say is I was looking for toilets on the way around, because I was thinking, like, if I'm going to need to use the toilet here, I'm going to have to go. I didn't see any toilets the whole race, so that was kind of concerning a little bit. Luckily, I made it through. Seen some people who didn't, unfortunately. But yeah, Valencia, definitely brilliant. Highly recommend it to anyone who's looking to hit a fast race. Especially if I can get a reasonable flight into Valencia next year, I think I'll definitely do this marathon again, just because the course is so fast. The crowds are great, the atmosphere is great, and yeah, I'd said before this and coming up to the race, I was starting to kind of get a little burnt out with running, and I was like, I'm gonna go on a bulk here. Coming into Christmas and the first few months of the year, I don't think I'm going to run any marathons. And then as soon as I hit that 3:11, as soon as I crossed the line that day, the next thing I'm thinking about is, when can I go do another one? When can I put in a full block and get this sub 3? I think that's what I'm going to go for. I'm probably going to do Belfast I think it's in the 5th of May, and that'll probably be my next race. So hopefully I'll make some more videos about the training for it. Hopefully we can start to get back at it. My knee, I mean, I tried to do a run today. I have some niggles on actually my other leg. My knee feels sort of okay. So we're going to take it easy for a couple of weeks here at least, try and get everything back to 100%. Not going to do anything crazy, and then start pushing the miles here again in the new year, and hopefully build up to a point where we can hit that sub 3. If any of you guys ran Valencia or ran maybe CIM, I know a lot of people were running it in America on the same date. Let me know down in the comments what time did you get and how did you go. And I'm also going to put together a video kind of breaking down the specific things I was doing in my training. Again, more on that speed work, more on them long run sessions that were a little bit harder. That got me from the 328 to the 311. So make sure you're subscribed if you want to see that. And I'll see you guys in the next video.